communication enabled.
Enabled? You gotta be kidding. I've got nothing but snow here.
What's going on? I thought we had a lock.
I don't know. We're through the firewall, have full control of the tower, the logo was up and looking good, then nothing.
Hey, what's happening back there? We lost the whole transmission.
Hold on. I'm running a system diagnostic. Hard drives are fine. The network's still up. Modulation is within limits. Let me check this satellite. Got it. Tracking is off. I'm gonna realign.
We'll dial it in and let's get back online. We don't want underground members seeing this snow when they try to get the transmission.
You got the wrong bird. Unless we're transmitting Spunko's commercials.
Hang on.
Hang on. We're hanging on dead air. Let's go.
Okay, I'm reestablishing the lock. Picture should be clearing up.
Twisted Metal was really inspired, I think, by myself and a fellow designer, Mike Yam at Sony. It was basically inspired by our deep love of action movies. You know, a lot of critics, I think, and people sort of say, you know, do we really need another car chase and things like that? And everyone's always bashing on car chases, but we love car chases. And, you know, what we really wanted to do with Twisted Metal was sort of give players the opportunity, and as importantly, give ourselves the opportunity to actually participate in an interactive car chase, to actually be behind the wheel of a car chase, like in the movie Speed or Terminator, or The French Connection. That was really the whole creative inspiration, and then it just happened to come along at a time when the technology was right. When we met with our developers, Single Track up in Utah, that was really the first time that we had really experienced affordable 3D that your home consumer could buy, and we realized that that idea, that inspiration for sort of wanting to put the player in a Hollywood action movie could actually finally be done, via this really cool technology, which allowed you to actually live in these worlds and things like that. So. The first one wasn't. The first one was, I think the first one had all the heart that we wanted it to have. I mean, the first one is very much sort of like, we always compare it to sort of like a garage band version of, what ultimately the game ended up being, which is Twisted Metal 2. The first one had all the heart that we wanted it to have, but it lacked a lot in terms of presentation, gameplay, things like that. But it wasn't until the second one that we were really able to make the game everything that we originally intended to make. Again, I'd have to say the gameplay. There's a lot of things in Twisted 2 that I'm real proud of, that I think that everyone involved with the product really, put into it and should be proud of. But the most important thing to me about any game, and especially Twisted 2, is just the jump in gameplay from 1 to 2, and the fact that, especially when you're competing with a friend and you're fighting with a friend, it's such a richer experience. There's so much more strategy, so much more depth to what you can do, that I think that's the thing that I'm really most proudest of, that we were able to learn what it takes to get that gameplay and figure out how to execute it. I think the biggest leap was just, I think gameplay says it all. I think it was just a real, Twisted Metal 1 was my second game as a designer. It was the developer's first game as a developer, and in that learning time between Twisted 1 and Twisted 2, we really began to understand what it means to have good gameplay, strategy, risk and reward, payoff, things like that really make players stay with the game. Whereas Twisted Metal 1 it almost felt more thrown together than the second one. So gameplay, I guess, would be the key thing. I really like mapping. I think mapping is just, the key to what it means to be a designer. I mean, I love to sit down at the whiteboard, either with myself or with my fellow designers or fellow development team, and just really sit there with all these markers and figure out what the level is going to look like, or figure out what the strategy is in the level, or what the gameplay is in the level, and what the cool effects are. That really is the most fun. Not only because it's you get to let your imagination run wild, but because 12, 13, 14 months later, you get to see that terrible looking stick figure map on your whiteboard in your office is now translated into a playable video game with great graphics and sound and playability. So I think mapping would be the most fun thing that I do. I don't really have an average day in the sense that every day I come in and I shut my door and I design for 2 hours, and then after, it's not that structured at all. All of my days are basically centered around making sure that the game that I'm working on at the time, and I only work on one game at a time, is all the elements are being poured into it. And some days that'll mean that I'm working on a map all day long for a certain level of the game. Other days that'll mean I'm working with the developers of the game or the artists, trying to figure out who the characters are that live in the world of the game, all the way up to dealing with marketing, who's trying to come up with a great slant for the ad in the magazines or television, or working with the testers to try to figure out where all the bugs are to make sure we can release the game on time. So it's just a whole amalgam, I guess, of things that I do. But the cool thing about my job that I love about it is that I get this great variety of stuff that I get to do, but it's all centered around one thing, which is making a really great game. I think if you look at the games I've done, if you look at Twisted Metal 1, Twisted Metal 2, the game I'm working on now, it's very apparent what I think about violence in video games. I think I have no problem with it. I mean, I feel it's a way, it's an outlet for, it's a release, I think, for the things that we have inside. I think it's crazy if someone tells you that, we are not violent creatures, and I would much rather rip someone's head off in a video game and get it out of my system than do it in the real world. And I think it allows that. I think it's one of the few mediums that does allow that. There's a game, it came out a while back called Flashback, which came out for the 16-bit systems, PC, stuff like that, and that was really the first time ever that I had played a game that really immersed me in that world. I mean, for however long it took me to finish that game, I was there, I was in that world, and that, I think, is something that I hope that I can do one day, is really present players with gameplay in worlds that just totally suck them in and make them forget where they are. So I would say it would have been Flashback. I mean, today there are certainly games that are doing that very well today on PlayStation and other systems, just some wonderful games out there. But I think Flashback really, for me, was the first one that did it, and it sort of holds that ranking in my mind as the greatest game of all time, which I wish I would have done it, and I hope today one day I can. I would love, well, I don't know if I would love to, because usually what I usually find that when you actually get into the job that you think is so great, it turns out to be really great, but there's a lot of hard work with it. So I don't think there's a perfect job out there. I love what I do. I wouldn't trade it for anything, and in fact, I would, as long as my bills were paid and I could take care of my family, I, would do it for free. But I would, I'd like to see myself doing comic books one day. I'd love to. I can't draw at all, but I'd love to write comic books someday. There's a couple things I would say. One is that it really isn't, at least at this point in time, that hard to get into the industry. At an entry-level point, either through being a tester, being an artist, being a programmer. I mean, if you really want to get in, you will find a way in. I'm not going to sit here and give you a secret way in, because there isn't one. It's basically, if it's something you want to do, you'll find a way to do it. What I will say is that be able to distinguish yourself from being a fan, which is a wonderful thing to be, from being a game maker. And they're entirely two different things. And I see a lot of people come in and they're huge game fans, but when they sit down to make a game, they really don't care so much about what goes into the game. They just want to regenerate what they've, or regurgitate what they've already seen. So I think really make sure you want to make games. And you should be able to design games. I always say, you should be able to have a coconut and a crayon and make something fun out of it. And, the excuses of, well, I don't have a SGI machine and I don't have a, 200 megahertz Pentium. I mean, understand what it means to make games and gameplay, and study the great games, study chess, study checkers, understand why there's as much technology in Street Fighter 2 as there is chess in Street Fighter 2. And those are the things I think that the game business really needs, is people who understand gameplay. So I would say that learn what game making is, make sure you really want to make games, and then just find a way to get in and keep pushing, and don't let anyone discourage you, because it's certainly doable. Hell, as they say, if I did it, anybody can do it. So. I never really intended to get into the game business. It was really a total fluke. I had always played games as a kid and stuff, and I'd always been a video game fan, but my initial intention was to go into filmmaking. And, I'd gone to film school and all that, and basically the video game thing kind of happened while I had just gotten out of film school, and I was sort of waiting for, the call from Steven Spielberg or George Lucas or something. And, in the meantime, I figured it would, I needed to eat, and make money and stuff, so I had heard about this job as, game testers, which basically what I thought at the time, which is not the case, that all they did was sit around all day and play video games. So I figured, this will be something cool to, bide my time and make some money, until I get to make movies. And I kind of fell into it like that and got the job from Sony back when Sony was Sony ImageSoft. And, once I got there, I started seeing the potential of the next generation of video games, and seeing how, as game designers, we can take games beyond the simple side-scrolling, stuff that we had been seeing for the last 5 or 6 years, and really take players into a new I don't know, sort of a new direction of fun in gameplay. So, since then I just sort of haven't looked back. I just started as a tester and kept going. It was an accident, really.
You may have already seen this.
Style, sophistication, the ability to launch napalm into oncoming traffic. If these are the things you look for in an automobile, it's time you test drive Twisted Metal 2. Fully automated weaponry, dual rocket launchers, and the new APS flamethrowing system. All standard. Drive the 1997 Twisted Metal 2 on PlayStation from Sony, and let style be your weapon.
Now we're going to show you what it took to make this ad. The Underground has asked me to give you an eyewitness account of the making of the Twisted Metal 2 TV commercial. I'm David Bamberger, the product manager for Twisted Metal 2, and I accompanied the film crew to Prague and saw how they captured the look and feel of a luxury car ad. Prague was the perfect city. It's located in the Czech Republic and has a rich, glamorous feel that we were looking for. We were lucky to find Monique locally. But to get the properly arrogant male lead, we had to import Timothy from England. He actually turned out to be a nice guy. Of course, the real star of the ad is this fully loaded, heavily armed car.
Style, sophistication, the ability to launch napalm into oncoming traffic.
Of course, a missile launcher wasn't a standard feature in these big American cars, so we added one.
3, 2, 1, go! 3, 2, 1, go!
Instead of using a computer composite, we used a real explosion to get the reflection you're about to see in the actor's glasses.
That's very nice.
Ability to launch napalm into oncoming traffic. If these are the things you look for in an automobile, it's time you test drive Twisted.
This next scene was really tough. Our model had a hard time overcoming the urge to run from the gunfire. With each blown take, the door had to be rebuilt with fresh explosive caps.
And action.
With only one door panel left, she pulled it off perfectly.
All standard. Drive the 1997 Twisted Metal 2 on PlayStation from Sony.
This was one of the last shots we did because the flamethrower actually melted the hood of the car.
And let style be your weapon.
The crew somehow found this big American car in Prague. They worked on it non-stop for a week and turned it into this twisted metal weapon of mass destruction. It wasn't street legal when we bought it, and it certainly wasn't street legal after. So there's your inside look. And remember, drive angry.
Jim Brown.
Tim Brown came into our motion capture studio, and the result you can see in the game, the smoothest animation in a football game today.
That kind of stuff to explore really, to see how they could take you running and put it on the screen and fill it in with animation or whatever, and it ends up being a little football player in the game doing exactly what you were doing.
So what it does is for each frame, it will go through and it will figure out where each of these dots actually were. And they really don't mean anything until you start moving them. And once you start moving them, you can see basically where the hips and the knees and the ankles and all the joints are. And voila, you end up with a stick figure. You want to have a left foot, left foot, so that you can take that and cycle.
It was really fun to be here with these guys and to see how much they really put into making sure that these games are exactly how the guys are doing on the field.
One playing the game, you draw it anywhere you want, we'll implement it and you draw it.
Well, just that, man. Just Well, I'm very, very excited about my special play because I guarantee you it's going to be a touchdown, especially if you have the right receiver out wide.
That's it, baby!
E3 is America's largest trade show dedicated to the video game industry. You might have read about it in gaming magazines and maybe even seen a few pictures. But now, through the use of time-lapse photography, the Underground takes you for a quick look inside E3 and the making of Sony's outrageous booth from the ground up.
So, you want interviews with developers, demos of the hottest new games, codes, tips, and tricks you can't get anywhere else? Cool black market underground gear.
Nod your head yes.
To get all that 4 times a year, you gotta subscribe to the Underground magazine. And to subscribe, you gotta have a plan.
Here's the plan.
Get up off the couch. Step over the coffee table. No, don't look away. Walk through the dirty laundry. It is critical that you make no eye contact here with anyone, or they will try to make you pick things up.
Don't even think about picking up.
Move towards the front door. You know, where you keep the mail. Finally, you're at the door. Think back to when you picked up the mail. You saw the Underground CD, so you threw the rest of the mail aside.
Concentrate!
You ripped open the expensive, well-planned mailer, trashed it, opened the jewel case, ignoring all design hours spent creating it, and just tossed it, only to grab out the CD. The CD case. The subscription card inside the front cover.
Where did you throw it?
On the floor? In the trash? Crushed in the doorway? Find it, and the cool stuff, the games, the codes,
the power,
can all be yours. Find the subscription card. Fill it out. Don't screw up. This is a great plan. In fact, subscribe and you are automatically eligible to win some pretty cool stuff.
Anyone can. A subscription is not required. See the booklet in your CD case for details.
We got there.
Chicken pot pie.
Mmm.
Kind of nice.